Good evening to everyone from Milan. Actually, it was sunny. Now it started raining, but maybe the sun is coming back. Tonight, we'd like to present, like Alice was saying, a couple of projects that we completed recently, which are connected to some things that are very, I would say, typical of the Italian culture, maybe also stereotypical of the Italian culture. And we will do that just to also express some aspects of our practice, some points that these projects are sharing, especially maybe one that is how architecture can really combine two different conditions. One is to be a specific response of contemporary needs, I would say, so how to be really contemporary. And on the other hand, how can the architecture at the same time engage with very highly specific situation. And I'm not talking about a physical situation, but I'm talking about in a broader sense on a cultural situation. So probably this is the main theme of our discussion. I would like to also thank you all, the architects that are connected, especially Tony. And okay, let's start with the presentation, which is, okay. Can you see my desk?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so so let's start with the central station, just to welcome you in the city in Milan, which is the city where Giancarlo and me are working and living, and all the architects that are working with us are working and living. I can see them online, and Milan is just not like that, just not the place where we're living, but it happened to become something more important in the understanding of the city, our understanding of the city, and our understanding of the buildings and the city. So in this first photograph that you see here on the right side, the building that you see on the right, it's the result of a substitution that we designed some years ago, probably 5 years ago, and it's a very special corner facing this large void of the square in front of the station. And of course, one of the theme of the project, probably the most relevant one, was how to combine the figure of this new building within this monumental situation, and how to combine this figure with the idea of a background, of an urban background, rather than an imposing presence. So you see here the facade is made of precast concrete panels that are hanged on the structure and become thinner as you go from the portico to the crown, as you can see here. And one of the idea was that the building could be able to combine two characters. The first one was the more physical and tectonic quality of the building that you see in this image on the left side, which was the existing building that we partially demolished, and this clinker brownish frame building. Actually, our project is the little slice that you see here in this in the very corner of the block, and how to combine this character, the first one, with the other character that was the one related to the lightness and the taper of the vertical structure of the tower that was fronting on the other side of the square. Actually, this tower was built in the 60s by Leopoldo Pirelli as the headquarters of the famous company that was producing car tires. In a very special moment of the economic and social moment of the city, which were the 60s, and also a very special moment of this company. That was actually founded in the second half of the 19th century, as many of the big industrial companies that were putting a lot of energy in the construction also of the city for 100 years. And here you see the production site that is placed in the north part of Milan. And this is an area view of this place, which is called Bicocca, which is a quite strange name. And its meaning is little villa, little castle, let's say, little castle or fortified villa, which is the piece. I don't know if you see my pointer, is this building that is the only one rotating into this very geometric grid of the production site, which gives the name to this place. Actually, now this place has been really changed, of course. And 3 years ago, we won the competition to make the new learning center for, it's raining back. The new learning center of Pirelli, just right in this point, which is a quite special point because it's close to this villa and it's at the corner of the road going north from Milan to the north part of Lombardy and crossing this, let's say, central axis of the production site. In the 80s, at the middle of the 80s, Vittorio Gregotti won this, won the competition for making the master plan of this very big site, foreseeing this, as you can see in this image of the competition, sequence of big, huge blocks, urban blocks, 140 meters each side, resembling the scale of the production pressings that were in this area, with office buildings, housing. Over here you see the university, and then on the right side you see the production pressings of Pirelli with the Bicocca and with the vertical element, which will be the cooling tower, where then he built the headquarters for Pirelli. Actually, as you may know, in the following years, Gregotti designed all these buildings, so we can say that this is a one architect city, which is a very good piece of it. Our project is a very little piece, the red one, supposed to be the last one of the campus, in a quite interesting space, as I was saying, because it's in the middle of the garden of the villa, and in between these two conditions, the new cities built in the 90s and the productive sites on the right side. Actually, it's the most, let's say, public building of the campus, because it's the one that contains all the services for the community, I would say. The learning center, the restaurant, the cafeteria, and all the services related to the welfare. So it's the public's, all the features, all the functions that are not in the building inside. It's they are in a way related to this building. And as you can see, it's aligning on the main street, and is articulating this figure here into this square, which is facing this little building, which is the Pirelli Foundation, which is an incredible place full of documents regarding the history of the company, but also the history of the city. You should know that Pirelli was one of the main figures that has been promoting the urban renewal for almost 100 years. So it's a place in an industrial side, but full of history. And then you see that it extends also with this element through towards the inner garden, linking with a series of different paths with the existing buildings. And then on the left side you see the villa, which is a peculiar building, I would say. It's a very interesting present in this place, not just because it's a Renaissance building. I mean, this is a 15th century building that was reworked several times. So it's something like an architectural pastiche. And the peculiar thing is the fact that it has been object of different intervention by architects, by Milanese architects that were in a way engaged in this discourse about how to work with monuments, how to deal with the existing, how to restore ancient buildings. So the first one was Luca Beltrami, which was the one that was, let's say, reinventing the castle, the main Castello Sforzesco, the Sforza Castle. And together with Ambrogio Annoni, they reinvented, let's say, this building. They added some chimneys, as you can see here, and then a little tower with a clock, and then they really added pieces that were not existing and that, for analogy, were transferring pieces of existing Renaissance building in the city. And then after the war, Piero Portaluppi, which is another key figure in the discourse, made another big intervention. Especially he built up a big staircase inside, and then he also worked on the facades, as you can see here. This image, how the nonchalance with which Portaluppi puts a door just beside the window, the Renaissance window, so that you really don't understand which is the old thing and the new one. So it's a really kind of interesting resource for the project, and the aura, let's say, of the building is expanding in the place. And then we saw another building of Piero Portaluppi, which is this one, which is in the middle of the city, which is the seat of a company producing silk. It's a silk production company. And we were interested, it's by Portaluppi. He built it 20, 30 years before the intervention in Bicocca, and we were interested in how this building stands for its elegant environmental character, in which the pursuit of attunement with the surroundings that you see here in this photograph is prevailing in relation to the specific purpose of the building. And we thought that this attitude of this building could also be something that could be also in our project. So something that could detach from the functional point of the building. And okay, finally, this is the project, as you can see here from the street, in which you see how the buildings tries to be different from the typical, glazed volume that is of course the mainstream in making office buildings also in Milan, and in which the structure, as you can see, is and the formal expression are overlapping, and in which the facade of the building declares to be not replaceable. I mean, it's something that is really together with the body and with the structure of the building. Maybe you can see further on the streets that black building that was restyled probably 3 times in the last decade. So it's we really would like that the new piece could have structure and facade the same thing. And then coming back to Portaluppi, another thing that we really loved about that project, it was the expression of the facade, which is made out of Ceppo stone, which is this kind of natural concrete, with very refined ornament, as you can see in the basement also, but also in the main facade. I don't see my purse, so okay, my pointer over here, yes. That makes the surface of the stone soft as a silk as a silk carpet, as a silk fabric, and it's also embellished with these metal railings that you can see here. And then here, this is the entrance of the building along the street, and you see how there's a little bending that announces the entrance and the metal railing of the entrance atrium of the building. This is a photograph, an axial photograph of the entrance, where also you can see the structure, the figure, and the figurative roof that are two pitched roof elements that are standing on the crown of the building. This is the corner going round and entering into the campus, and the side facade. Once more, the corner. Okay. And then, yes, actually, we were actually interested in the ornament, and we were fascinated by the sophistication of the visual culture that Pirelli was developing, has been developing for several years. I would say probably the most dense moment was probably the post-war, also in this case. And all the advertisement product and also all the corporate image was managed by very relevant graphic designers, and also by photographers, by movie makers. So we were really fascinated, and we were trying to understand how all this richness could really take part of the project, not, I mean, in a let's say direct way, but try really to rework all this visual sophistication. This is, for example, a project by Bob Norday, which was the art director of Pirelli for some years at the beginning of the 60s. And this is another exhibit design space that Norda was the guy that you see in the center of the image, designed in the 60s, actually, while the tower, as you can see on the left side, was built. So it's the point that I mean, you see this image that are taken from the huge visual archives that are contained in the Fondazione Pirelli, and you see how this process of abstraction of the rubber thread, which is the one that constitutes the surface of the tire, becomes linear or curved motifs, geometrical motifs, and they also become, in some, for example, in some cases like this one or this one, even more some vegetal patterns, or maybe also this one, with a visual richness that we really would like to use in a way, and of course not a direct transfer, but a reworking of all decks. And we really would have liked to that all this could have been a piece of the expression of the building, and the idea was to concentrating all this in the structure of the building, and let's say in the way how the structure could become the frame of the big windows, and so that the decoration, the ornament could be framing the windows like a Renaissance building. And maybe looking, and maybe can also, that could be also perceived from a close view and not from a view from distance. And so the idea was to concentrate in the ornament on the structure, on this curved pillar, and then we made a catalog of patterns which were interpretation of the visual tradition that we saw, and that was emerging with some other distant reference that we found in the place and elsewhere. These are the rubber molds, that are making the possible to work with this pattern into the concrete construction and the metal formwork in which the pillars were poured. Actually, some of the pillars were load bearing and some other were hanged to the structure. And here we have some details of the construction, where you see the joint between the horizontal and the vertical element, and a detail close to the socle of the building along the streets panel, another joint, and then this is a view flush the urban facade along the street. Okay, and then the idea that all this richness could be combined with a very, I would say, simple rectangular figure of the plan, as you can see here, in which the structure is a very clear one with two blocks that are along the street, facing along the streets, and in which the interior space is quite articulated, because it provides all the spaces for the different functions that I was mentioning you before: the learning center, all the canteens, the restaurants, and the gym. And there are two big staircases, which are these ones, which are curved staircases that are poured in situ, that are connecting the three levels of the building. This is the first level with a space on the roof of the extension towards the garden, and then the third floor, of course, which is the one in which the light that is coming from the roof is lightening this huge element of connection of the rooms of the learning center, as you can see here from this section, in which you see how this space is connecting the three levels of the learning center. This is the staircase. This is one of the two staircases that is connecting actually the gym with the restaurant. This is the second one that is starting from the ground floor to the hall of the first floor of the learning center. Some image of the inside that are taken before the use. Actually, there was the lockdown when it was finished. So at this moment, the building is used, but it's let's say it's half empty, I would say, because of the distant rules that are foreseen in this moment. You can see here in this image the relationship to the garden. So it's a very transparent building from the inside, while on the outside it seems very corporeal and quite opaque. This is the relationship to the villa, and also you can see here how the structure and the space inside is quite nude. So there are not added, let's say, layers to the structure. All the equipments are embedded within the pavement and the ceilings. And this is one of the rooms, for example, of the learning center that is facing the square of the Fondazione Pirelli. Over there, you see the cooling tower that is the headquarters actually of the company. And I mean, it's the building is performing in terms of energy, of acoustics. It's a LEED Gold building. It's a really up-to-date organism, but all this remains hidden, I would say, in the structure, and the appearance of the interiors remains solid and as an ancient building. I would say this is the relationship towards the garden. The big space that you saw in the plan, which is connecting the rooms of the learning center, which is lighted by this big skylight. And then once more, let me check here. Okay, once more the canteen and relationship with the garden. That is this quite strange situation of the distance that we are all experiencing in these moments. Coming back again outside, this is the space that connects the building, and you see the little bends that the facade is doing towards the garden, and this is supposed to be the place of the community together and to make some events, and the portico that relates the structural vertical element of the new building to the Renaissance presence of the villa, which with this slightly curved connection between the vertical and the horizontal lintel. The relationship to this wonderful garden, which is listed and has been integrated with some new plants in order to have provide a more organic set of the vegetation, and these paths that are also defined by these lines of the bench, which are in concrete, like the facade, and in a way try to link to the quality, to try to extend the quality of the building into the garden and into this space towards the other buildings. While all this approaching the villa, change color and gets and the concrete gets closer to the terracotta color of the ornament of the villa. Okay.
I follow with the other project that is a very peculiar occasion, like the Pirelli one, with a company working with tires and cars, a very Italian passion. Also about football, we had this peculiar occasion to be asked to design a football center, a training center for a strange team that is playing in Serie A, in the major league, but then is belonging to a very little place in the middle of a mixture of the rural industrial flatland of Italy. We are showing this image somehow to connect with what also Angelo was saying before about this project that on one end they're trying to directly engage with the problem that the client and the program is asking for, but the answer is somehow like in this image, it's a corner kick. It's not direct. Also, recently Pierpaolo Tamburelli said that me and Angelo, we like a lot, like all Italians, catenaccio, that is a kind of a defensive attitude. This image wants to show that there's a lateral way of thinking that probably we're trying to apply to produce a different relationship with the need made by client, adding the cultural complexity that is engaged with the project. Okay. This is an image, very blurry to say, about the land where we are working on. It's a place along Via Emilia, that is the Roman road connecting Rimini to Piacenza. And it's a flat land that was divided into a series of fields to be given to the soldier, the centuriatio. It was a kind of measurement of the territory and the landscape that it's still readable. Although when we see in the other image the dimension, the original one, it's still perceivable in this big square and these big lines that are confronting with the topography when it's existing. The project, it's on one end trying to engage with the traces and the measurement of the landscape. On the other end is engaging with the sprawl that is industrial land. It's facing now, because the industrialization and the production is occupying the territory without any concern with the scale and the measure of the flatland. These are some images that we can look at from a photographer, Luigi Ghiri, who was living and working very close to the place where we made the project. And what is interesting here, it's the form of this place, the flatland, that is absolutely horizontal, and the atmosphere, the materiality, the tone and character that this place, in the other image, we see. The presence of architecture is reduced to productive building with a very special character, because they're almost sculptural. On the other hand, also the landscape, like the volume of trees, they become very volumetric respect to the horizontality of this land. This other image from Ghiri is showing how also facade and buildings, they acquire a very strange and weird monumentality, because it's on one end very rural and yet very sophisticated. When we were asked to do the training center for football, we have a moderate passion for football, I have to say, more Angelo than me. But absolutely no knowledge about the functionality of a football training center. We've been going around in Europe to see some center with a common scale, but we found out that there is no real typology defined. But we discover this interesting image about I was born calcio in Florence. And it's interesting that the game has a background, a very urban and built background of the game. And the people, also in the other image, it's engaging, like we see here, with the presence of a background. And so the idea that we got was to produce the construction, the new building, as a discrete background to the life and finally the game. Trying to come out from the stereotype that we associate to the mediatic message and what we say, bling bling of the footballer and the player. In this image, we see the settlement. We decided to set the building exactly in the middle of the field where to play. It's a long line, long as a building, as a football field, and there are other two buildings that are one tribune to look to the play, and the other one is a service building. The reference is to the productive building like the Palladio Marchese, the building that are producing the character of the construction in the flatland, service building almost, with a repetition of structure. And we found out this interesting book that we're showing because of the Architecture Foundation occasion. It's a British reference to an interesting book talking about the functional tradition. In the other image, we can see some example in the book. It's talking about the interesting repetition of structure and the character for productive building. Before modernism transform this production and this typology into a problem of functionalism. And so lacking absolutely to any concern about atmosphere, structure, and space, but just a matter of solving a program. This archetype facade, like the one we were seeing about the functional tradition, they come out, and this research made by an Italian photographer, producing this work that is called L'Alfabeto of the Flatland. And we see that there is in this archetype and typology, there's a language that is defining the relationship between this volume, the facade, and the territory, the landscape dimension. And this is an image from another project in Milan that we hopefully will start the construction this year. That is a public school, a competition we won a lot of years ago now. That is connecting with this idea of producing a collage of this typology. This is also a project in a horizontal landscape plan, a park in the city, but with no presence of urbanity. And these are some images of this collage of form that are linked to different types. The presence of a unique material and the relationship with structure, it's also linked with an example that is very Milanese about a peculiar building from Muzio that through the structure and the unique material is connecting different form and types. Then we look to this example that is La San Petronio in Bologna to find out, the question was how to represent a building for a collective function. And so we look to the example in the area. And for example, this is a building made of a facade with salienti, with a setback, and then with an interesting relationship between the unfinished facade with a precious marble and the brick that are just the structure and the space enclosure. This is a maquette we made to find out how to produce this ambiguous monumentality that we try to produce for this collective function of the training center. Almost 1,000 between young players like kids and the first league team. They are working and playing in this building and in the ground. Okay, this is the model. You can go on. And the idea was to make a reference to this kind of productive and functional, not functionalistic building, to produce a building made of naves. And so we see how the structure is defining the space in the ground floor. Then the building is becoming, with a setback, immediately corresponding to the structure here. And then the last floor, very narrow, with the same element. And then here we see this relationship between space and structure and the modularity that is trying to talk about gravity, like this building that we see in the flatland historically. Try to resonate with their materiality. Okay. Okay. This is the floor plan. It's very clear. It's made by two staircases, equal. One is a more public one, and the other one is more intimate to access the field. Then in the ground floor, we see all public function, like a meeting room for press meeting. And then this oval space is the first league space for a changing room and then for services. In this first floor, there is the youth football team with the same service, everyone with offices for technician, gym, physiotherapy, and so on. The program is very articulated, but in the end, in the second floor, we find the administrative management offices with these balconies with a round shape like the facade. This is the section with the two staircases and these two spaces that are double-8, the entrance and the gym for the youth team. This is a series of sections, as I was saying, about the double-8 of this element in the entrance to give the sense of collectivity to this entrance. And then the other section with the sequence of spaces. Okay. Okay. Okay, this is an image of the facade with this basement that is a cladding of precast concrete polish to give a precious socle to the building, while the rest of the facade is curved to produce an internaty and a concavity on the little square on the front of the building. Okay. And now we have a series of images that we can see all together about different aspects of the building with the setback and the relationship with the field. The whole object that is maintaining the big structure and the continuity of the masonry element, and then how freely windows and opening their place. This is the end, the other side of the building and the relationship with the field. Okay. And here we see the shadowing of a portico that is on one side of the building, while the other it's directly placed over the field. Okay. And here we see how the building placed in the middle, it's producing a background of the game and the activity, as we were saying. People is observing the game from every level of the building, like in a tribune in a stadium. Okay. And here we see a detail about the railing that is curved in order not to appear directly on the facade, but to be very discreet and somehow gentle respect to how sober and strong is the form of the building. Okay. This is a view from the tribune overlooking the artificial field. Also, what we tried to produce was a relationship between the building and materiality, also in terms of perception, while the field, as we see, partially they're artificial. And so somehow there's a strange relationship between nature, landscape, and this field. Very quickly, we see the concrete roof of the tribune. Okay. These are some sections showing the relationship with the materiality. The facade, as we see, on one end is containing, maybe in the other image, we see the aim about solving technologically problem about energy. This is a LEED building, certified and so on, like the Pirelli one. But in the end, it's trying to maintain a strong relationship with the materiality and the perception of the building itself. Okay. We can go on here. Okay. Here are some images of the working site, and we are showing it to show the idea of the building that wants to be corresponding to structure and it's doing it through the use of exposed concrete and with the horizontal elements that are in predal slab, like the Aldo Rossi cemetery that Alice was quoting before, that is not far away from here. And the idea to produce a strong relationship between the sobriety of the building with the function that is training instead of being a mediatic space, and the sobriety of the exposed material. Okay, you can go very quickly. There is an element that is a precast block polish everywhere, to give a sense of a preciousness through a very humble and very common material. The corridor can go on. Okay. This is the entrance of the building with this double 8, and this relationship directly, as I was saying, there are no cladding and no finishing almost. Okay, we can go quickly on this. This is the press room and the space for physiotherapy that are very pragmatic and very sober. Okay. This is the only concession to a difference to the kind of sobriety about the changing room for the first team, somehow to give a sense of difference respect to the rest of the center that was somehow expected. Okay. But then this is the result about all this architectural cleanliness that then it's not maintained. Okay. There is an interesting project about signage also that has been made especially for the building. Okay. These are the youth space, very pragmatic also, and the gym. And we can go. Okay. These are the corridor of the office building that is so narrow that, as we will see in the next photograph, from the offices, you can see both fields on both sides of the building equally. Okay. 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 And then we can go very fast with these last images that are just showing the people working here and how is the atmosphere through these images made by Stefano Graziani. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That was fantastic. Both very beautiful buildings. Perhaps, Giancarlo, if we saw, well, Angelo, if we stop sharing screens, then perhaps we can see it better. So everybody, if we've got another kind of 10 minutes, so if there questions that you'd like to ask, then just let me know in the chat box, and I'll unmute you. I mean, the frame of you emphasised this concern to make buildings that were culturally situated, and it was very clear that in both the projects you showed there was a deep interest in the place and the culture of the institution that you were designing for. Has it? I mean, I'm conscious that you're now building beyond Italy, and I think a couple of weeks or so we have Piovani Fabi, who you're collaborating with on this project in Brussels. Does that feel? Have you consciously kind of made yourself specifically an Italian practice to begin with, or how's it challenging to be building in context that you're less familiar with?
By Angelo.
I will start. Okay, we will share the answers actually. Yeah, that's a good point. Actually, the Brussels project was the one that Alice you were mentioning, that we are developing with Giovanni and Ambra in Brussels, is the first experience that we are doing outside Italy. Of course, the title of this conversation tonight was about, let's say, Italy. Maybe it's in a funny way, but of course, the point for us is not about any kind of identity. It's not about Milan or about Italy, but it's about, in general, how you understand, how you think that in a fruitful way, architecture can be developed in the contemporary situation. So this can be valid in Brussels or in Milan or in Sassuolo. So very far away from identitarian discourse, which can be also quite dangerous or nostalgic one. We were talking this with Christoph Graf some days ago about the fact that also nostalgic approaches, of course, are pathetic. We are really interested in how to root the project and to culturally root the project and to make it richer by combining things that are coming from different sides and are just putting on the table, and just to rework all this, that of course has to take into account the fact that we are seeing a lot of things and a lot of images are coming far away from the place where we are working. But at the end, we saw that the buildings that we really like are the ones that are really linked and very meaningfully related to and they emerge from the culture of the place. So and also in Brussels, we're trying to do something like that. Of course, trying to merge some qualities of the city that we like and that what we experience daily, but making the transfer and trying to make an hybrid between the things that are we know more and the things that we find in the place that is far away. So it's not about a local discourse, but it's about the engaging and combining things to make the project rich and meaningful.
The two projects you showed us, did they both come as the result of competition wins?
Pirelli, it's a competition, and the other one is a direct charge. Yeah. But without our having any background about football. The
right.
point was to produce the collective building.
Yeah. And is that? Do you find that I mean, this interest in making a building that's kind of culturally situated, I imagine do you find it easier to do when it's a direct commission, when there's a product of the work is a product of a conversation with an actual client, rather than a competition where you're necessarily, maybe making more gestural proposals that are have less grounding in an actual conversation and understanding with who you're building for.
No, there's we made also for this occasion together with Christoph Graf a reflection about this, and we call this situation like a secret expectation, because somehow both in competition or direct commission, we are trying to solve immediately the request that is coming from program, aim, ambition of the client or the situation, but to add an indirect solution that is linking the project to many other things, trying to have a broadening of the reference and the relationship to make it reach. In many cases, the client is not aware about how public is the building that is building, because it's convinced that it's a private problem. And the collective dimension is something that we try to engage with in this case. Also, the fact that before we were talking about the literality of the references is not, for example, considering history as instrumental, and so to demonstrate knowledge or a direct descendant from some example. But the point is to considering history as a continuous, and our aim is to somehow try to resonate with something else, not to be a solipsistic discourse, nor the client, not the architect.